Bonjour everyone, I hope you're well. Today I'm going to be answering the question that you sent me regarding my SQE1 Resit exam back in July. If you may or you may not know, I failed my SQE1 exam in January and decided to take it again 6 months after in July 2023. So in this video, I'm going to share my tips on how you can possibly increase your chances to ace your Resit. But before I start, you know the drill, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Let's go straight to question 1. When thinking about retaking the exam, I considered 3 main questions, but before I start on those questions, I really want to say that this step of thinking whether you're going to retake the exam and when is so crucial. Don't underestimate it, because think of the SQE1 as a marathon and you're being assessed on the final sprint. So of course they will not care overall about the marathon, but this marathon will prepare you to the final sprint. So I figured that I would need a week or 2 to actually first process what happened, because it's such a big hit. Like honestly, the failure, I mean you saw my reels on my Instagram page. I was devastated because I was not expecting it, and it was such a hard toll on me that I took that time for me. I really took it for me. I tried to accept, because I strongly believe, but that's personal, in the power of acceptance. And I thought that, you know, if actually I accept things now, it will make it only a little bit smoother for me in the future. Whenever I'll have doubts, I'll remember why I accepted this and what happened, and it will not haunt me at the worst time possible when my head needs to be in the game. So yeah, also think that, you know, if you don't take that time for yourself, the decision you're going to make, you're going to have to stick to it. So it's going to be easier for you if you actually process things and focus on taking the first steps towards your future journey, rather than having to rethink midway, which is okay. It's okay to have doubts, but you know what I mean, right? It's even better to just pave the way a little bit better for you to walk in and just to continue your journey. Because when you get your results, it's so concrete. It's like, what do I do now? Whether you pass or you didn't, is just like, what's the next step? So before thinking that, you have to let things sink in and accept them. At least that's what I did for me, and it truly helped. And then the 3 questions I asked myself was, am I going to retake the exam? When am I going to retake the exam? And also the money question, like the funding. So am I going to retake the exam? I put everything into perspective. I was like, whether I take or I don't take this exam again, nobody's going to die. I can be a solicitor taking other routes, because there are other ways of becoming solicitor. Maybe one is better for me than another. And then I also thought, okay, if I don't, do I really want to be a solicitor? And that's a question that is so helpful in the future when you're gonna, let's say you want to retake the exam, this answer you're giving to yourself at the beginning when you've got your result and you unfortunately failed, is gonna help you to motivate you, because you're gonna keep reminding yourself of, I want to be that, and this is the route I chose, so I have to stick to it. So it's gonna be hard, but I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do it. Which is why also I was thinking, am I ready to go through the whole emotional roller coaster that the SQE represents? And it took me time, and I figured that, yeah, I'm gonna give myself this chance. But I know some people decided, you know, to not retake it for now, or maybe forever. And I admire them so much, because it also takes courage to know when to stop. Then that leads to my second question, which is when to retake the exam. So I decided to retake the exam 6 months after the first attempt. But to be fair, I got my results in March, and then in July I was sitting the exam. So that gave me like maybe 3 months, of preparation for a Resit. And it was hard. It was really hard, because you feel like it just doesn't stop. You know, barely did you get your result, you get that slap that you have to hurry as much as you can to catch up, because technically you're already late. So it was demanding, but I was like, if I take the exam in January, I was so scared that I would have to study longer, not to forget things, because it was too far ahead and it was next year basically, that I was like, okay, I'll lose motivation, because I know myself, if I don't have an exam, I lose motivation, I lose track of time, I'll just look like I lose the objective at sight. So I decided to be like, okay, I'll retake it in July. But then of course I had this fear of being like, aren't you sabotaging yourself by not giving yourself enough time to prepare for the exam? And that's why I tried to give myself like the best, you know, because I was like, I want to do this and I want to increase my chance of acing it. So of course I might not be the best like prepared I can be, but guess what, you will never be prepared for the day, at least not perfectly. And even so, it doesn't really matter how prepared you are, because you just need to be efficient on the day. So that's what really matters, because like I said, they don't bother about whether you were prepared before, because you're being assessed on those 2 days of exams. But I'm not saying that preparation is not key. It is key, but I know that some people told me, oh, you know, I don't feel prepared. It's okay, it's all right. Doesn't mean that you're gonna fail. Actually, it just means that as long as you're doing good during the exam, you know, it's gonna be, and you've done the sufficient amount of learning and everything and of work, it should be okay. The last question I'm gonna mention is the money question. So regarding money, it's a big question in itself to know and to determine when you're going to take the exam if you decide to retake it. Because for example, I'm self-funding, but I know that I had to really question whether this would put me in a pickle this year or not, because it's a cost that I didn't expect to have. And luckily I could, but definitely take that into account if you want to retake the exam, because don't rush. You know, don't rush it. If you really want it, then you're gonna work for it no matter what, but the money is crucial, because you need it to pass the exam and to book the exam. So yeah, do wonder about if you have the funds right now, or maybe wait a little bit longer. So I was with BARBRI, and basically you have 2 books. You have one for FLK1, one for FLK2, and one final thinner book for final revision. For me, that was more than enough. Same for the mocks, because first, with the full-time job, I barely had the time to do all the mocks. It was a lot, and they were various format as well. So for me, that was more than sufficient. And regarding the books, I personally can't focus on too much material, and I fall into that trap of, you know, when you have so much materials that instead of actually understanding, you're just learning and trying to remember everything here and there. So personally, I just took the BARBRI book, and to be fair, they were more than sufficient, because they were covering everything and the format and structure was sufficiently clear for me. But I would understand that, you know, it's not necessarily that you're going to fall into the trap of having too much material that you lose focus, but maybe that your book doesn't put it in a way that you understand things, right? So I would definitely recommend Devil's Advocate, if that's the case. I actually met the founder last week during a networking event, and trust me, you can trust in them, because I felt like they really want the best for the students, and they just really here to help. I actually met some people there at the networking event who didn't even follow a prep, like a proper, I would say classic one, but just took the £15 monthly subscription to do all the tests, or to get all the content, like all the notes and everything. And I heard from people who actually passed the SQE just by following that prep that they're very efficient, because they update a lot compared to basically maybe other preps or even the SRA. They do update all the time everything they have, which is best for you, because then, you know, you will have the latest versions of pretty much everything, the content, or for example what was assessed in the last exam and what you need to focus on. So I would say it's a bit more tailored maybe than the traditional preps you can have. So my advice would be, either you follow a prep and you take that, I mean, £15, to be fair, is so it's really cost effective. And you should definitely go for it, because I didn't try them personally, so be careful about that, but from what I've heard from a lot of people, it was really worth the money. And either it was great as a prep on its own, I'm not sure about that again, because I haven't tried it. I went through the traditional way, or as an extra. If it's an extra, to be fair, I'm pretty sure that it would definitely be worth it. And just go for it. Or if not, you can just follow it as a prep on its own. I had so many questions on this topic. For example, how many hours I would study per day, or did I make notes, or when did I start to fully study for my SQE1 Resit. Overall, what I'm going to say is I'm going to share with you my method that worked for me. I'm going to be fully transparent, but the only thing is, and this is a big disclaimer, it works for me, it might not work for you. So be extra careful, because some of the things I'm going to tell you may not be the smartest nor the most, I would say, recommended, to be fair, but it worked for me, and it's just how I realized how I function, and I was just fully honest with myself, and I really invite you to do the same, because you need to assess what works for you. So the difference between my first attempt and my second attempt is that I took what worked in my first attempt, and whatever didn't work, I just ditched it. Whether I would replace because I felt like something was missing, then yeah, I would explore a little bit what I could replace it with. For example, when I took law exams before, or any exams in my life, I was like, you know what, that really worked. For example, breaking down with someone, explaining to someone vocally what, you know, is the principle about, and just making it more understandable for this person who maybe doesn't study law. That worked for me when I was studying in Paris. So I was like, okay, I'm going to use that again and see how it worked, and it did really helpful. It was really helpful. So that's what I'm saying, like, see what works for you and what doesn't. You need to start with that, otherwise it's not really gonna work, because yeah, you're gonna keep trying to find something, lose time, and it's not gonna work. For example, making notes. Someone asked me if I made notes. This time I made notes. It's extremely time consuming, I'm not gonna lie. For example, I took 2 books of 900 pages and broke them down. But for me, it was comforting. For me, it was like a safety net. And also I realized that on my first attempt for FLK1, I made notes, and I got a better grade than FLK2 when I didn't make notes. It's just for me a way to kind of like just extract everything that I want to retain, and just writing it down by hand and making sure that, okay, they're stored in my head. So that's why for me it was important to make notes. But for some people it might not work. So if you're at BARBRI, for example, I know a lot of people who just took the final revision book and passed, and for them it was extremely helpful, because some people don't even know how to make notes, and that's perfectly fine. It took me like years to actually know how to properly make notes. So instead of wasting this time, yeah, just take the final revision book and work on this. This also works. Also, how much time did I spend per day to study? Well, this is the part I'm saying is maybe not the one that a lot of people would say is to recommend. I'm not always consistent. I'm not always disciplined. I'm disciplined when I need to and when I have the motivation, but sometimes I'm just human. And I was so honest with myself this time when I like did the exam, because I was like, girl, be honest with yourself. Tomorrow you're gonna be tired from work, like you're not gonna want to work. Sometimes I'll just come home and I'm like, no, not today, I'm not gonna study for 2 hours. So again, I would see globally and take how the week was. So for people who are with BARBRI, you have a PSP, and it's like, I would say, broke down in 2 weeks. I even went a bit away from that, because I'm the kind of person that needs a global vision on my modules, rather than task by task. So I'm going to explain that in a little bit. And also someone asked me, when did you start to fully study for the SQE1? Well, like I told you, it took me a week or 2 to actually be like, okay, I'm getting back into this. But you need to take that time. You really need to take that time. Otherwise, I don't know what other consequences. Maybe, you know, you'll be fine. And honestly, great for you. But I think it's important for you to take that time and think, do I really want this? How am I going to do this? Because I don't want to mess this up this time. Now the method itself. So what have I done concretely differently from when I first took the exam and I was preparing myself for my first attempt? First, regarding the lectures. So again, this whole part is mainly gonna take as a base the BARBRI prep, but I'm pretty sure that you can transfer that to the prep that you have in practice. So when I will use terms, I'll say, okay, this is for BARBRI students, and I'm gonna try to explain as much as I can what could the equivalent be for the ones that are not with BARBRI. So regarding the lectures, I listened to lectures for FLK1 but not for FLK2, only because it was time consuming, and I realized that I've already listened to those lectures, which are actually a shorter version of what's in the book. So I prefer to focus mainly in the books, because your exam, believe it or not, is not going to be on a global chapter or like a big principle. It's going to be on one tiny paragraph, in this book. So it's a pain. It's horrible because you're like, oh no, I can't remember that one line, but I can visualize it, but I can't remember. But well, that's basically your questions in your exam. So that's why I was like, okay, I need to eat that book and just extract everything I can and understand, because that is the important bit. And also I was spending too much time on listening to lectures that I already listened to. And for example, FLK2, for example, tax law, not for me, people. Definitely when the lecturer was speaking, I felt like she was speaking Chinese. So I was like, the actual exam is not about understanding the principles, but it's mainly about understanding the formulas and just like putting and calculating things. So I just focused on that. So that was why for me lectures were a big no-no this time. But if you have an auditive memory, definitely listen to the lectures again. But when it comes to the books, then that's why I made notes, because I just extracted every information I needed from there. And then regarding the practice, so this is for the BARBRI student, focus on your revision activities. You know, the activities with 200 questions, because they are from memory of the first exam and from the second exam I took, exactly the questions you're going to have, believe it or not. They're not in a multiple choice question format, but actually they're questioning you on the content that is most likely going to be at the exam, because it's just an overall of all the things that are in the book. So if you know that, most likely you will recognize questions that are similar. For example, when I done my first attempt, I remember there was a question about how what was taken into account when deciding whether a person was eligible for legal aid in criminal matters. And I remember perfectly that this question was in the activity. And I realized that I focused so much on the questions, like the practice questions and everything, and less on activities, whereas I shouldn't have. So this time I kept doing it. Like I kept redoing the activities and the questions per modules, but practice question, the mix and match questions, I didn't focus too much on them. I think it's important if you're not resiting the exam, but it's your first attempt, to do that, definitely. But when you're resiting, maybe don't take too much time on this and really focus on the big mocks. So the mocks, I took them a bit before, of course, the exam, but I retook them all before the exam. Reason is because in my first video about the SQE1, I explained how I felt that this whole thing was like a competition, like a physical competition, and I needed a warm-up. So for me, doing mocks actually put me into that mindset that, okay, I'm gonna sit here for 90 questions and answer. First, whenever I got it wrong, I was actually happy because I could understand why I got it wrong, and it just like imprinted in my memory. Second thing, and most crucial thing, is that you need to practice, because I told you, you are assessed on the day of the exam, not on what's happening before or what's happening after, but on the day. And the biggest thing that a lot of students have been telling me is that at some point, either they get tired during the exam and lose motivation because it's too long, or they just doubt on one question, and then that's it. It's done for the rest, because you lose your focus, and that's when you actually accumulate wrong answers. So you can try that with your mocks, and just try this, what I'm telling you, to just lose motivation at some point, and you'll see your accuracy and your good choices will just like decrease. So definitely, no matter what happened, really think, I'm there for the exam and I'm gonna ace it, only because I'm not gonna give up. I'm here for the exam and I'm gonna give my best on those 2 hours. I think, yeah, it's 2 hours or something for one session, and then you have another 2 hours in the afternoon. Overall, I definitely prioritize understanding rather than learning. And now if I can give you a bit of do and don'ts. So regarding the do, I would definitely say to just focus on reading rather than the lectures. If you're taking like retaking the exam, if it's your first time, definitely listen to lectures, they're very important. But if you're a resitor, think whether listening to lectures actually help you, because at the end of the day, you need to take it as an advantage that you already been through the prep. don't take it as you've never been through it, because it is an advantage. You already know what's going on and you already collected the knowledge. Now it's just a question of being strategic on how to boost that knowledge and make a difference from your first attempt. For that, you retake again and again the test. Practice is key, as well as legal knowledge, and definitely make notes if that works for you. If it doesn't, don't worry. Again, for the BARBRI student, you have your final revision book and it's more than enough. Actually, I remember that a week or two before the exam with my friend, she was also passing the SQE, and we were together and we were actually focusing on taking the final revision book and just taking page by page and breaking down every concept. And actually we had a good laugh, and that helped us because we were taking like example from daily life and breaking it down in our own language and slang, and that helped us to actually remember on D-Day, oh yeah, I remember that funny story we were talking about when we were talking about this, and trying to find an example, very dramatic example, but guess what, do what actually works for you. And regarding the don'ts, I would say, now I know a lot of people are going to be upset about what I'm going to say, but like I said, I want to be transparent about it. Don't follow your prep blindly, only because your prep is such an amazing tool for a good base and structure and guidance of where you're going, how you need to study and everything. But you can not expect, and I've heard so many like feedbacks on this, and people were really upset about their prep course, but at the end of the day, don't feel like you can't be really upset at them in the way that you have to remember it's a standard prep, and even if they're doing their best to tailor it for students, at the end of the day, they cannot take every student's specificities. They try their best, but it's just not possible. So take it as it is, okay? Take what works for you and keep following what they're telling you, because they know what they're talking about. When I'm saying that about the multiple choice question method, it is a method in itself and that will help you. But at the end of the day, structure things how you really like, how it really works for you. For example, I realized that during my first attempt, but I was like, no, I'm going to follow blindly my prep, and because they must know what they're doing. And yeah, they did know what they were doing, but it's just because I function as module per module that I realized I just need a global vision. So on the first attempt, if I had only one attempt, I would have definitely followed the program that they had. But when it came to reading, I think I would have done my reading maybe like I would have taken a week to read for my modules and make notes. That's the part that I think I would have done differently, because it just works for me to have more of a global vision on module per module. Even though when you're being tested, you're being tested like one bit of a module, another bit of a module here and there, which I think is good because it stimulates you, right? And it's better because at the end of the day, you get used to having a question on landlord, question on criminal, and everything mixed together. But when it comes to really reading, take your time for yourself and really assess what works for you. The fear of failure is always going to be there. It's going to be like this annoying little voice that you're going to have in your head, whether you're actually studying and you're feeling productive and then doubt will come, or you just finished a session and feel so proud of yourself, and then you'll have that little voice that tells you, but what if I fail this time? Because like I mentioned before, you have 3 attempts and then you can't pass the exam for a certain amount of time. So it is very stressful, right? But like I mentioned in my videos before, it's all of this is like a mental strength journey where you have to be strong. But guess what? Sometimes you're not always strong. You're just human, and that's okay. Just like having doubts is okay. But how do you deal with them? Because this time you feel like, okay, I want to pass, right? In my first attempt, I was unhappy at my job. It was horrible. I forbid myself to even enjoy life. Forget it if I could breathe, to be fair. I was like, no, I mustn't breathe. I must study all the time. Like, trust me, it was horrible. And my mental health was really down. My confidence as well. I just looked after myself whenever I was feeling down. And how I did that mainly this time, that I think, honestly, if not 50%, even more, really helped for me to pass, is that I had a life. I know it's gonna sound weird, but people who are passing the SQE, I think you're understanding what I mean. It's like the first time I was so stressed. I felt like I remember you guys saw me on my first video. I cried and I called my mom, and I was like, it felt like my mom was like, it felt like you were gonna die, but actually, Aurelia, it's just an exam. Nobody's gonna die. And I realized that it is just an exam. It's just because I want it so much that you confuse it with fear, but actually it's excitement of wanting to do so well and achieving your dreams. So it just changed my perspective of, I'm not being sentenced here. I genuinely chose to do this for myself. And I remember actually the day before I retook my exam, I was with my friend and I kept telling her, I don't feel like tomorrow is actually an exam. So that's another tip that I could give you. See it more as a mock. When I realized that, oh, okay, tomorrow I'm passing the exam again, I took it like, I'm just gonna pass a mock. I've been doing so many mocks and it's just another mock, and that's it. And that's why I need to be focused and everything, and it's gonna be all right. So I know some people, this is the part that I was saying, my method is most likely not the best, but for me actually it works. I'm not the kind of person that can isolate themselves for 3 months and just focus on that, because they're, honestly, I admire those people, because for me they're really smart enough to think, okay, it's just a 3-month sacrifice and then I can enjoy as much as I want. I'm not like that. What truly happened, and again, it's very personal, but maybe some of you are like that. What happened was, like, when I enjoyed. I didn't think, oh, I need to study and things like that, because I actually at some point wanted to study again. So whenever I would go out, I would fully enjoy, and then I was like, okay, today I'm gonna do this module. And that's what I was saying. I didn't think day per day, but I was thinking more in terms of weeks, because I'll be like, okay, by the end of this week I need to finish this module. And whenever I wanted, like, I would say by myself, you know, like willingly to go study, I would be more efficient actually than if I didn't enjoy with my friends to grab like a coffee or something, or went to an exhibition. On the contrary, I'll be more focused and understand better and be way more efficient than I would if I just like stayed every night with my book open and just staring at it. So yeah, so that's one thing definitely that changed for me. And for reciters, like I said, it's better maybe to take that option of having a bit more of a life, because take the advantage of the fact that you already know how the exam is gonna go, that you feel a bit more secured, that okay, I don't have the stress of not knowing what's gonna happen to me tomorrow. But also, just a quick note, I met a lot of people during networking events who actually spent 3 attempts and on their 3rd attempt like got it. So forget statistics. Actually, there are people out there who did succeed, and they were not more extraordinary than you or anyone else, to be fair. Remember, you're doing this for yourself and no one else. So try your best to remain positive, all right? It's not the end of the world, I promise you. It's just the hardest thing maybe that you're gonna do in your life. Maybe you'll do harder things later on, but for now, it is the hardest. And when it's hard to remain positive, reach out to people. You can even reach out to me by messages. I know that a lot of people do that, and I actually appreciate it, because I'm like, okay, you know what, we're all in this together, and they're feeling as bad as I felt back then. I often, when people ask me and share, oh, today is a hard day and everything, I feel like I tell them, well, you know what, once I actually went to the toilet at work and cried because it was just too much. Not a lot of people know that, but I'm not afraid to say that, because I think it's important that you know you're not alone out there. There's so many people passing the exam. Everyone is different, of course, but we're all going through the same roller coaster of emotion and the same struggles, and people out there can understand what you're going through. So definitely reach out. And also, don't forget, there are good days and bad days, but you need to look after yourself. That is extremely important. Remember, it's not a race, it's a marathon. So prepare yourself best before starting the marathon, and throughout the marathon, whenever you have a doubt, keep focusing on your final goal and on the final sprint. You're going to be a solicitor no matter what, if that's really your dream, whether it's via the SQE or not. Be strategic and follow your gut. Don't do what's best for others, but what's best for you. Be honest with yourself and believe in your capacities. Don't make crazy objectives. I'm the specialist in that. I'm an overachiever sometimes, and I had to take a reality check on what I can actually bring to the table and stick to it. And you enjoy fully. Grabbing a coffee with a friend will not actually prevent you from succeeding. Actually, it might help you to study well after that. Finally, and most importantly, prioritize your mental health. I can't emphasize enough. I always say that in all my videos because it's just a strong point. Like, the one thing I retain from the SQE1 is that it just tested your mental strength. And some are born with it, but otherwise you need to build it. I personally had to build it. And trust me, I watched so many videos about self-development, or for example, how to beat anxiety by breathing in 2 minutes, you know, right before the exams, and all those little tips that actually helped me to feel better and more confident in retaking this exam and acing it. Right, everyone, that's it for now. I hope that I answered all your questions. If not, feel free to message me by email or on my Instagram page. You can always use my discount code to get £450 off when booking your SQE1 prep with BARBRI. And don't forget, subscribe to my channel to stay tuned for more videos. Till then, à bientôt!